Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to this second webinar run by Milner Browne. My name's Mike Smith of Grading Consulting. I'm going to be delivering this. If there are any questions, please do note them, and at the end, more than delighted to actually go through them and have a go at answering them. Okay, this is about how to prepare and execute an ERP project. Okay, and this is to do with going through issues in preparation for the ERP journey. Right? The game plan is to survive and thrive, not struggle and strive. What do I see as the basic requirements? What's the benchmark? Well, number one, and I think you can all agree, you want your project to deliver within the agreed budget. Your project delivers within the agreed time frame. So if it's supposed to go live in November, it goes live in November. This may seem like a silly one, but it really isn't. That your project results in a solution that actually works in the way you planned, not suddenly working in a way that somebody else decided and you're working around to make it, to fit it. And ideally that your company and customers have added value from actually going through this process. You'd be surprised at how many don't. How do we go about it? Okay, well, first of all, what's a project? And forgive me if I'm preaching to people who already know this sort of stuff, but just in case. Projects are established generally to solve a problem, improve a process, implement a new idea. This one will change your business. If it's done right, it will change your business. Now, at the bottom of some of these slides, I've got a Mike says. This is the sort of aside, if you will. And this one's saying, be absolutely clear on this, because what you're about to do is not an IT project, but it's a business one. This is a real opportunity to improve the way your business works. Okay, the project. Projects have some or all of the following characteristics. They will involve change, and generally the change creates value. At least that's the plan. If it doesn't create value, you've got to question why you're doing it. Projects have an objective or endpoint. And unlike day-to-day activities, things that you do normally, they're repeated as required again and again to do the same thing. But once a project reaches its objective, it finishes. What's the point of saying that? Well, one of the issues we're going to go into is a thing called project creep, where you have a plan of what you want the project to do, and then as the project progresses, things get added into them. Oh, can we do this as well? Ooh, I wonder if we can do that. This is a big problem. Now, whereas existing processes provide a known means to get things done, projects by definition often tackle problems for which even the method to be used is not clear. So this means that projects are by definition more risky than day-to-day business processes, and this risk is just something that's a matter of course. But what we're talking about today is how to minimize that risk and maximize your opportunity of success. ISO, for what it's worth, defines a project as a set of coordinated activities with a specific start and finish, pursuing a specific goal with constraints on time, cost, and resources. And those constraints on time, cost, and resources are very important because they are at least two of the ways in which projects can fail. Now, for those who were involved in webinar 1, we talked about how you decide whether your company actually needs a new ERP or whether it needs to have its existing ERP reinstalled or tweaked in some way. And then going through the business of creating a statement of requirements and deciding what it is you actually want the software to do for you. then go out into the market, find your vendor and make your choice. Now once you've made that choice that the software that you've found looks like it could actually do a decent job for you, the software is no longer your sole focus. 80% of the success of this implementation is how you implement it. And this means the project and change planning. How the execution of the architecture you design within it align to your business and its aims. What that really means is, does it work in the way you need it to work for your staff to do the job they need to do? And then the final bit is the quality of the people that you use to execute. The good news here is that although every project is unique, we have a known way forward. There is a way forward through this. But it is a big job, and please don't underestimate it. For those who were at the last webinar, you will have seen that failure is sadly more common than you might expect. Something over 72% of ERP projects can be said to fail. Not ours, of course, but I would say that. It is true, though. And if we give thought to understand the main failure points, we can move to avoid them. So what do we mean by failure? Project costing more than promised, taking longer than promised, not delivering the quantified benefits as promised. And that word quantified is important. You need to know yourself what you're trying to do will mean to your business. If you don't know what the end result is likely to be and what it's likely to mean to your business, you really shouldn't start this phase until you do. And therefore, project isn't benefiting the business as promised. Any of those, in a sense, it's failed. For those who were here last time, you'll have seen this slide, but I'm just going to show it again quickly just to reprise. The concept of black swan. And a black swan is a name given to things which crawl out of the woodwork that you didn't expect and cause real problems in the project, resulting in too much cost, too much time, not doing what it was supposed to do, not working the way it was supposed to be. And doing it wrong can be costly. I know that this isn't strictly a normal distribution curve because the two tails are not even. I don't know if you can see the cursor, but if you can, you'll see that the actual line is moved to the right and the actual mean is sitting at 27% over the expected cost. And on average, if it's not properly controlled, on average, your ERP project will cost 27% more than you expected, and it can be a lot more than that. So what we're talking about today is how to avoid that happening. Because when people turn around and say, well, why should we pay for you? You say, well, if you don't, between 7 and 8 of you is going to end up paying a lot more, and it might not actually end up working the way you want. Why? We said last time, as a bit of fun, waste, fraud, lies and basic cluelessness. But they are seen as the key drivers by the research. But another way of looking at it is poor leadership, resource deprivation. What that means is, especially in an SME where it's not overstuffed with staff with nothing to do, everybody's busy, everybody's trying to keep the company going. And then there's these people turning around saying, well, we're going to prepare this for you for 3 weeks' time. Can you have this data sorted out, cleaned and ready for us? And to do that, you need resource. And then during that period, things happen. Sorry, we were too busy. We didn't manage to get this done. And your vendor comes along and says, well, we've got these 5 people sitting here ready to do this test for you. If you haven't got the stuff, we'll need to go away. Our time's been wasted. We'll need to charge you and we'll need to rebook it. Political maneuvering. That's the situation where you haven't actually got buy-in by everybody in the business. And of course, everybody's speaking the words and saying, oh yes, we'll help, we'll be involved. You're dealing with the branch in Manchester. Oh yes, we'll do this, we'll do that. And behind the scenes, they're actually playing games to try and make sure that your project fails. Everybody knows this happens. So quite often problems are a human failure rather than a failure in the software. That's sadly true. Once you've got decent software, the destiny really is in your hands. Okay, well, let's be positive. What can we do? Well, all projects have to go through the same basic steps. First, we must decide what needs to be done. Then we must design the solution. We must implement the solution. And most importantly, you must be in control. You must own the project. You mustn't give the keys to the burglar. It's your business. So I don't actually, and this isn't something all vendors really want to hear, but you don't really want to go to the vendor and say, hey, can you manage our side of the project as well? Because they can, of course, but then you're not really in control, and you must be in control. You need to manage your own side of the business. You need to manage your own side of the project. Okay, the project's in phases. The first phase is requirements gathering phase. What do we need it to do? Hopefully this has already been done by this point. If it's not, it really must be. And then you go into the design phase, the development phase, change training, testing, and then a cutover. The post-go live phase is the subject of the next webinar, webinar 3. Okay? So in short, we're saying, have we got strategic vision and leadership? Have we got senior management support? Have we got a project champion who is permanent, senior enough to make decisions? Is there effective project management? Is there change management, plans and projections, so that you can work out how you're going to get from where you are to where you want to be? This is working on the basis that you've not gone out and saying, can we find a system that mimics precisely what we do just now, including all the spreadsheets that we currently fill in and all the databases that we currently fill in and all the notebooks we currently fill in. We'd really like to get rid of those. So that intrinsically means we're going to work in a different way. So part of the phase in terms of deciding what you want the system to do is not just working out how you're working just now, but bearing in mind the capabilities of a modern ERP, working out how you will be able to work in the future, which means changing the way people work, which means possibly changing the way people interact between departments, maybe changing the way they interact with customers, maybe changing the way they currently interact with collaborators, stakeholders, suppliers. And as soon as you get into that sort of change environment where you're saying, well, once this software's in, you don't come in Monday morning and do exactly what you did before. So people start getting worried and concerned and saying, well, what does this mean to me? I spend 80% of my time filling in these spreadsheets and doing the copying and pasting and all the rest of it. Where do I fit in? What do I do? And they start getting worried, and it needs to be managed. So is there change management plans and projections? Can we plot progress? Is there a recognition in the business that a measure of business process re-engineering may need to take place? And we must plan and arrange resources and prepare for disruption, because sadly it will happen. Hopefully you try and minimize it, but it will happen. And I'd be a liar if I sat here talking to you and kidding on that it doesn't, because it will. And post-implementation, once it's gone live, that isn't the end of the game. There is a life cycle. And once this first phase is done and the system's up and running, you will think of things that you could do tomorrow and how it could be improved. That's normal. So there is a life cycle. So we'll come back to that in the next webinar. But you get into a continuous improvement cycle. Okay, so first of all, you need to set up your steering group and project team. These people are key. Ensure they're there because they're good, not because they're somebody's friend or somebody's cousin or because politically they really need to be. They need to be good. Ensure that your project sponsor inside the company is senior enough to take decisions quickly. Can ensure that at times staff are released from the day job to do the tasks assigned to them, even though somebody in another department say, "Oh, you can't take away Jeannie, I need her." There is an argument for an external project management assistance to help to provide guidance and liaise with the vendor, purely because in most SMEs there aren't just people sitting about available to do that job. And don't forget that your staff are also tied up keeping the business going. The good news is that project management is not necessarily full-time. A day or two a week is usually enough if they know what they're doing, but it pays you off in spades. Right. The truth is the cost of getting this wrong is far higher than getting it right. I've seen too many companies seriously go wrong, and I know of at least 3 which nearly went out of business because of the failure of it. Okay, for those who know project management, forgive me, but why is project management important? Well, because first off, organizing chaos. Projects are naturally chaotic. The primary business function of project management is organizing and planning projects to tame this chaos. It's hard to think of any complex business endeavor that was ever achieved without organization and planning. Project management is the organization, planning and control of projects, and implementing an ERP is as complex as you'd like to get. Managing risk. Any good project has plenty of risk. The nature of business is taking risks. Risk is fundamental. It's a fundamental part of business strategy. It's a fundamental part of change. But risk can be and needs to be managed. Right? Minimizing that chance of a negative event or loss. Uncontrolled risk, tossing the coin, just ends in destruction and compliance issues and problems. So project management is there to help identify and control risk. That doesn't need to go overboard. But if you do come into areas where you think, what happens if this doesn't happen? What happens if that doesn't happen? Then you're starting to think about managing risk. Quality is the value of what you produce. There's no sense in doing this if you're not producing something of value. Leaving the result to chance is just tossing a coin. Managing the integration. Yeah? These things don't happen in a vacuum, and your ERP will not sit in a vacuum. It needs to be integrated with the business processes. It needs to be aligned with your business processes. You can't build a sales system that doesn't integrate with your sales process and sales organization and does what you need to do to serve your customers. Okay, as an example. Change. Projects always happen in an environment where nothing is constant except change. Change is what's going to happen here. They're always a moving target, so you try and plan how people are going to work once the system's in, and in advance you work out how you're going to get them from where they are, how they're working just now, to where they need to be and how they will work in the future, including the communication, the training if necessary, the collaboration, the talking to, the getting the buy-in, the holding the workshops if necessary. It needs to happen. Unless you can put your business on pause, this is going to happen in the background while you're still running your business up until the point you're going to cut over your systems. Clearing issues. If you find issues, you need to work out how you're going to deal with them and clear them. Don't forget to deal with them until suddenly you go live and you go, ooh, I wish I'd remembered that. That's not going to work well. Retaining and using knowledge. As a byproduct of doing this process, you will generate knowledge. You will generate a real understanding, even greater understanding of the workings of your business. Or at least you should. And this represents a significant asset for most businesses. Okay? So manage that and make sure that you can retain that knowledge. And things will happen. So part of it is you learn from failure and thereby do it better next time. Keep control. That way what happens is then in your management hands, right? Although the actual work needs to be done and professionally, and it does need to be done and professionally, but I can't stress the above enough. You need to do the project management and it protects you. Okay. Outline project plan to go live. Your vendor will have theirs. Make sure you have yours before your project kickoff meeting. You need to know the key elements you'll need to complete prior to handing across the data to be imported to a sandbox, which is a sort of test system where you can load stuff up and try how you're actually, try the processes, get the people who are going to be actually working the system and doing the various things, sales, logistics, project management, finance, supply chain, whatever it is they're going to be doing, delivery, picking, packing, anything that is reasonably complex and involves options and decisions. You want to trial them and make sure that the vendors set up the system architecture the way you need it to be so that it works the way you want. As long as you're clear on the timetable you need for the various things you need to do, the two plans can be interfaced. And be realistic in your timings. Don't inadvertently underestimate. And strong project management is the watchword. So if you need time to work out how you're actually going to be, what the processes are going to look like in the new system from your point of view, take that time before you engage the vendor. Make sure that you have that. If you need time to work out how you're going to get Mike Smith from working in this way to that way, take that time. If you think it's going to take 10, 12 weeks to actually clear out all the data out of the various spreadsheets, databases, existing system, clean it, test it, check it, make sure it's the data you want transferred across, then it's going to take 12 weeks. So once you've decided on your timings, be ready to compromise, because your vendor also has a diary and won't necessarily just be able to fit as you want. Especially if short notice changes are required. So once you've got a project plan, do your best to stick to it, because if you then suddenly change and say, we planned to do this at the end of January. Well, we can't do that. Can we do that the second week in February instead? And your vendor says, we got 5 other projects going on. You're going to be kidding me. Oh, but we need this because people are away on holiday and we can't do that. Oh, well, we can probably organize it, but it's going to cost you. Okay. How do we avoid it? By listing the key requirements with business targets. Okay. So sort out the functions, the activities, sort out what the requirement is from your point of view, how it's going to work, how you want it to work, and what you actually want out of that. Project initiation starting as you mean to go on. So you've got your sort of list of requirements in your statement of requirement and turn that into specific requirements and business targets that says, this is the requirement, we want projects to be available. Create a master plan down to detail from the high level. Don't overcomplicate it. I'm not suggesting from this screen that you overcomplicate it. There will be areas where the high-level plan is good enough, and there will be areas where, because there's a number of people who need to do a number of different things by a specific time in order to enable things to happen, you need to split it down. For certain activities, develop trackers just to keep the project under control so that people can feed back and say, yeah, we've done that, yeah, we've done that. I'm halfway through, I'm 3/4 way through. It's probably going to be finished by week and Friday. It also means that if things are starting to go wrong, like complete and late, it's giving you an idea of where you want to focus your attention to try and keep the project under control. We started off with the requirements phase. You want that in-process detail, very much detail, especially where choice options need to be made by the system or by a staff member. So for example, on dispatch, if you're saying, well, if the box we're dispatching is over this certain set of sizes, it needs to go to this carrier. If it's over this certain weight, it needs to go to that carrier. If you're doing a purchase item, if you're wanting to buy something, well, if it's over £1,000, we want the system to automatically hive it off to, Jean McFadden for authority, and if it's over 10,000, it needs to go to someone else. So where you've got choice options to be made, you really want to detail those things out so that your vendor is absolutely clear what it is that needs to happen at these points. The way you want to do things is what makes you unique. Remember that. So when somebody mutters best practice at you, throw them out the door. Because one of the questions you've got to ask is, what do you mean by best practice? Are you talking about the processes that we've already got in the system and we want you to work that way? Or are we saying, well, this is how your competitors are working, so you want to do exactly the same so that you can compete on level grounds, whereas the way you work is what makes you successful. Unless you're in a monopoly market, where you own the market, or an oligopoly where there's only 4, 5 or 6 of you, you're probably competing with a lot of companies. You're probably competing with companies in China, Korea, Hungary, who knows where. They're doing things their way, you're doing things your way, and one of the reasons why you're succeeding is because of the unique things that you do that make you different. Cherish those. By all means, look at the processes and make them better, but cherish them. Don't just take on someone else's way of working. That's not necessarily going to make you succeed. So describe how you want to work, bearing in mind the capabilities of a modern ERP. And there's enough of us out there, I mean, okay, my company is one of them, but there's enough of us out there who do understand very much what the capabilities of the workflow capabilities and business rules capabilities of a modern ERP are. And certainly Milner Browne has got a lot of them. I'm not selling Milner Browne particularly, but I am doing a webinar here, and they do have a lot of capabilities. There it is. So don't leave this to your vendor's discovery team. Tell them how you want things to work. So, vendors love to get their discovery team in. They'll say, oh, the first thing we've got to do is spend 50 days with you and work out how you're working. Give them a document that tells them how you want to work. And say, okay, but that's where you start. How do I do it? By developing an understanding of the workflow processes in detail. Design phase. Consider how the way you now want to work will change how individuals work. They're no longer keying in information into this database. They're no longer keying information into this spreadsheet. They're no longer making those phone calls to say, have you got this product in stock? Have you got that product in stock? Can you do this? Can you do that? You've already made those decisions, and it's already been encapsulated within the system. It's at their fingertips. So consider what soft training will need to be done, as well as the how-to. So it's not just what buttons to I press, but also engaging them and making sure that people understand their position in the new order and that they have a valued position in the new order and they've got no reason to worry and fear. Think how the interactions between departments and stakeholders will change, because chances are they will. Work out how to communicate with the relevant people, heads, collaborators. Make sure you gain consensus and buy-in, because there's nothing worse than somebody or something from on high descending from Mount Olympus and saying, Sons and daughters, this is how you will be from Monday. Doesn't work like that. Just doesn't. People fear change, especially if they think they'll lose out one way or another. So act how you would want if acted on you. Do out the process flows. From the detailed process flows, create the job requirements in each functional areas. Identify what needs to change and with whom. Start intervention processes with workshops, not everywhere, but only where appropriate, where it's complex, where the change actually is going to be reasonably serious. So intervention with workshops saying, all right, how do you think we should work? You know, okay, you've already got the answer, but you don't give them the answer. You help them find the answer. Go through a process outlining how things might be after the go live. Get buy-in, get sign-off on the achievable benefits. If we do it this way, your life is easier, you go home with less stress, this works, everybody's happy, you're a hero. And ensure you create a win-win-win scenario. So it's not just a one-way street for the company, but it works for the employees too. It works for the suppliers. It works for the customers. Be proactive, not reactive. But know the answers before asking the questions. Okay, you've designed the architecture before giving this to the vendor. You've worked out how you want the company to work in detail. You've worked out what the changes are. But in parallel, you've also looked at the data needs of your new situation, the KPIs you want to start with, okay? They'll evolve, but you've worked out what you actually want to start with. You've looked at the data you have within existing systems, spreadsheets, databases, and what have you. You've gone through a process of extracting all the data you can into, say, Excel. Relevant personnel have filtered this for rubbish, cleared up the spelling, or cleared up the spelling, and left clean data sets to them. You've reached the point of needing to test the key processes. Only the processes that make a difference. You don't need to test everything, but test the key processes. User acceptance testing, or at least some key processes, the difficult ones. Check the vendors delivering what you want, and it works cleanly. You don't want to find out when you go live, because then you're struggling. It's also the case, in fairness, that despite your best efforts, when you've originally thought, well, this will work well, we'll do it this way, when someone tries to operate in the way imagined in the testing, you do occasionally find the issues where somebody turns around and says, that doesn't really work very well. It would be better if it came up and showed me this. In order to do this, you need to create user acceptance scripts, load the relevant data into the sandbox, and get your staff to run the script. Note each test, the result, and any comments. Post-test, review and adjust if necessary. Don't find out the teething problems after go live. Okay, so typical test summary. Just sort of saying, well, this is what we're doing. There's my steps, there's my procedure, there's the expected result. What's the actual result? And does it pass or fail in your eyes? So in short, select your team members and ability. Design the system architecture using any process changes implied by the way you want to work in the future. Make sure business managers understand why change is happening and what it means. Plan the project management and the chess moves for change well in advance. Have a process in place to realize the change in benefits, because at the end of the day, you're doing this because it's going to make your company more profitable, one way or another. So make sure it does. So wrapping up, the overall strategic vision. Know what you want to achieve. Have active senior management support. Be clear on your detailed requirements. Have buy-in. Ensure that you see the detail covered that makes you different. So don't just take on board what everybody else does because it's easy for somebody. Keep your differences. They're important. They're what make you unique. They're what make the market want to deal with you. Follow the plan. Okay, so the success needs the alignment of all three elements: software, the way you implement it, and the people you use. You can't do one element in isolation. It is a combination. So, back to the beginning. In short, plan and arrange resources. Prepare for disruption. Make sure that you know what you want to do and people are leading you and they've got buy-in. Senior management are with you. You've got a project champion. You've got project management. You've got help. There is change management, plans and projections. You can plot your progress. You know what you need to do. You know what you're going to change. Go do it. That's it. Any questions?
Hi Mike, we've got a question here from Neil Forbes. Neil says, thanks for the interesting presentation. What is your view on PM mythologies like Prince2, Agile, etc. for ERP?
That's a fair question. I mean, for what it's worth, personally, I mean, we understand Prince2. We generally follow Agile, but they are just methodologies, and that's all they are. They're not an alternative to doing the job properly. As a methodology, I mean, it helps, I suppose. It's an organizational way of making sure that you miss things and forget things. But of themselves, they will not make your project a success. What will make your project a success is actually doing the activities properly and well. But I don't knock the methodologies. They have their place. As I say, they are a formal way of organizing a project and setting things up. But they're not an alternative to actually doing the job right. I don't know if that's an answer, but it's the only answer I can give you. Hello?
Okay, Neil says, yep, thanks, that makes sense.
Okay, excellent. Anything else?
Okay guys, do we have any other questions for Mike before he leaves us this afternoon?
Silence, appalled. No?
Okay Mike, I think that's pretty much it from the floor then.
Oh my lord. I'm sorry about that. I was hoping at least for some questions, but there we are. I hope it's been useful. I wasn't trying to hit you over the head with sticks, but just trying to, as best I can, give you the benefit of our 18 years experience of doing this stuff in terms of what you need to do. That's all. Okay.
Excellent. Thanks a lot for your time this afternoon then, Mike. And I think the next webinar in this series is on the 25th of February. So hopefully everyone can join us for that one as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye.